Hey guys, thank you and welcome back to Fertile Hops Brewing Company. I just wanted to share that I tried my latest batch of beer that had only been bottle conditioned for about a week and wasn't to the carbonation that I wanted to, which is obvious, but I always do this. I always check at least a week in just to see how things are going. It's what is one of my New England IPAs. I actually got to share it around with some of the family. My uncle, who is mostly just a Bush Light guy, drank it all. He liked it. My grandfather, who doesn't drink all that often anymore, tasted a bit and didn't care for it, though he did say he got a lot of grapefruit flavor out of it. So my wife and I got to share the rest of it. Tasting notes, it was hazy, which I was intending for it to be no finding agents like gelatin or filtration. With the hops I used, which was Citra as a dry hop and Centennial, about 5 minutes left in the boil, I knew it was going to be very citrusy. I also got a lot of sweetness out of it due to the lactose that I put into it, and I enjoyed it. I drank all of the little sample that I had. I'm going to let the rest of them bottle for another week. And then I'll bottle the brown ale that I have fermenting, and then put the rest in the fridge. Hopefully, waiting for the day when I can, then when it's nice and cold and I can drink the rest of it. I wanted to share a story because I've only been in craft beer for about 6 years now. And because I wasn't really a beer drinker before that, I would have a 6-pack in the fridge and it would last a month or more. And I always went for the more expensive brands or the European brands, because if I'm going to drink and not very often, I want something good. And so I would go for a Bitburger when I could find it, or St. Pauli, or a Guinness if I wanted something dark. And so I'd have a beer here and there, and then let it sit, and then pull another one out. That all kind of changed when I met Daniel. This was when I was working at Missouri Credit Union, and he and I connected really quickly. Mainly because he had just left his PhD program, which was in medieval monk history. That sounds like a program that only a very few people would be able to get a job out of, and he found that out after about 6 years of very expensive after going through his undergraduate work and then starting his master's degree work in this particularly degree program, which I love history, and so he and I connected over that. And being a Christian, I just love the thought of looking back at how people practiced Christianity in the past, and so he and I, just kicked it off right away. And as we were talking, of course, when you talk history of the monks and history of the early church, you got to get into the history of the trades that they applied to support themselves, because most of these monks took an oath of poverty. And so the monks and the church had to support itself other than the tithes and offerings of the members. And one of these, of course, in Europe is beer making. And so that got him down a rabbit hole of, finding these eclectic beers and even thinking about brewing himself. And I had never even thought of brewing beer for myself. That's for the big companies, and it just was not for me. And when he started talking about these brews and the beers that he tried and the thought of making it himself, it just ignited something in me. It just thought, oh wow, you can do that? You can brew beer at home. Well, that job only lasted about a year, and my wife and I and our one child at the time moved back to Indiana when there was an opportunity for youth ministry at a church near where I grew up. And so beer making and even beer drinking got pushed to the back burner because of, and even at that time and less so now, but the perception of drinking alcohol in the church is something that's looked down upon. Drunkenness, definitely. And especially in the conservative church that I was working at, any beer drinking was looked at as a character flaw. Though the minister, who's a year older than I am, would get an occasional growler from a pub or something like that. But really, if we had a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of beer, it was a rarity in the 2.5 years that I was there. After those 2.5 years, we moved. I moved jobs and started working at a car factory plant, and still didn't drink much. I would have an occasional beer, or get a 6-pack, or if we were having friends over or going camping. One of the first beers that I got to try with the 4th of July was Bell's Two-Hearted Ale. And that was the real first IPA I had ever had. And it was good. It was dank and not fruity like the New England IPAs that I had after that, or since I've been brewing. From that was kind of a launch pad to my love of Zombie Dust by a local Indiana brewery called Three Floyds. And they have just been taking off everywhere. Though when we go visit my in-laws in Iowa, of course it's not out that west yet, but hopefully in the next couple of years when we go visit, they will have a distributor up there and we can get that and share it with some of the family, or I can bring that up. But I just wanted to talk about this friendship with Dan, even though it was short-lived. I can't even find him on Facebook anymore. It just really affected my idea on beer making and the flavors that you can get from beer. I was trying to remember if he had sent me home with a beer that had been aged about a year, 2 years. By the time he got it, and he had set it in a dark, cool closet, but it had been infused with, was it orchids, Elizabeth?
Passion flower?
It was some sort of flower.
Jasmine?
No.
Jasmine infused? It was something really exotic.
Yeah, but it was good. I couldn't tell if it was a flower or not in the beer, but it was good. I had never again thought of aging a beer because, most people just drink, the beer that they have really quickly, but the idea of aging a beer and it tasting good. Again, if you watch some of my other videos talking about my first beer drinking experience when I was a young kid and how nasty this 5 or 6 year old Budweiser, which had been stored in the refrigerator, was just horrible. I mean, it turned me off of ever wanting to try beer for the longest time. But again, one, being a kid and being bitter, and not good beer, I decided, no, I'm just not going to drink beer. And there's also, my family has a very high tendency towards addiction, be it alcoholism, drug use, eating disorders. It's just highly addictive personalities. And I even struggle that with smoking. And I limit myself to 1 beer, maybe 2. Most times I'm drinking. Even socially, even if I start to feel a little tipsy, I'll switch to water. I don't want to get myself in that. I don't want to get dependent on it. So I just steer away from it. But I'm not sure where I was going with that, but I just wanted to share that because it is something that I struggle with because I don't want to be dependent on anything. And I, as I'm making it and I'm, giving it to friends and family for taste testing, and Elizabeth, my wife, even came up to me spontaneously and asking about, hey, how much is this all-in-one brewing system, which happened to be the Claw Hammer 10-gallon kit, which, not to say I wouldn't love to have, but I'm not spending $900 on just the kit and not anything else to brew with, like the fermenter or more bottles or a keg or anything like that. And so we were looking around, and the Blickman's Anvil brand foundry we were looking at, and that's a much more reasonable $400 to get started with a 5-gallon kit. And so, that may be our future purchase, maybe not. It just depends on how things are going. But I just wanted to get on here, talk about beer, or the beers I made, the friends I've made over beer, and just to let to everybody, tell them, keep brewing. If you like this, hit that like button. If you want to subscribe to hear more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Comment, tell me where I'm wrong, or that drinking is horrible or drinking is great, or just let's start a comment, or let's just start a discussion on the, not maybe benefits of alcohol, but just the the flavors you've gotten out of beer, or the experience of just sitting down and enjoying a cold one. Thank you. Have a good night and stay safe.